Hi, I'm Ann of All Trades, and my friend Caleb and I just rebuilt this mini bike. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. This mini bike has an insanely cool story, at least for me. It started out as a power washer and a bicycle that I found in the trash at our old neighborhood in Seattle. This was actually one of the very first projects that I ever made when I started making stuff with my hands 8 years ago when I moved back from Taiwan. This project has gone through a ton of different iterations. Combining that power washer frame to the bicycle frame was my very first welding project, and nothing about it was pretty, but I was able to hobble together a basically working vehicle as time went on. After I had a vehicle that rolled, I realized I needed to have a vehicle that stopped, and I was able to harvest the brakes that are actually still on this one today from a electric scooter that I found also in the trash. Fast forwarding from that original hobbled together project, I ended up trading a drill press to get this better frame just because I was realizing that there was no point in trying to improve something like that even further. So I started on this one, but I had a bunch of problems with this bike as well. It would dump the chain, the brakes didn't work all that well, the wheel kept falling off. That seems to be a theme in my life. When we moved to Nashville, this thing was an absolute heap of garbage, and there wasn't really any reason to bring it, except for the fact that I found out that Caleb, remember the golf cart? Is also a huge fan of mini bikes as well, and he had 5 or 6 that he was working on at his house as well, so I'm like, let's put it in, we'll start working on it together. Immediately, Caleb started getting 1,000 ideas for how we could actually fix this bike and get it back on the road. The first thing Caleb and I had to do was get this thing to stop dumping the dang chain. I had it mounted on these really strange brackets that were kind of holding it in the right place. Turns out these little centrifugal clutches can actually go on both ways, so I didn't need to have this thing sticking out 4 more inches and therefore have the motor all the way over there. That was a fun thing to learn, so we switched that around, and all of a sudden, shock of all shocks, the engine brackets that we originally had fit. So we got the engine scooted over, and we got the centrifugal clutch flipped around the right way, and then we were good to go with the next part. Caleb suggested that we put a new wheel on the bike, and at the time I thought that was for some, safety or structural reason, but it turns out it's because he wanted to put a racing slick on the back. So this thing just became a whole lot less unsafe and therefore a whole lot more fun. We got the racing slick and all the other parts that we needed that we couldn't just find laying around in Caleb's garage from gopowersports.com. Switching out this wheel involved a whole lot more than just switching out the tire, because we had to modify the entire back end of the bike to accommodate it. And we also had to make a whole bunch of modifications to the wheel that we purchased to make it work with these brakes that I got from the electric scooter I found in the trash, and also just make everything kind of line up the way that it needed to. You'll notice some truly beautiful artistry right here, and this is evidence of where I had to cut and grind the tabs off of this wheel, because when it was spinning, it was actually hitting right here, so we had to obviously get rid of those. After we'd gotten this whole little mechanism here welded up, we had to drill this, but then we also had to widen out the hole so that we would have a little bit of play here if we needed to adjust the wheel side to side to make everything work with the chain and the centrifugal clutch up here. So there's a lot more to even this really, really ugly gut job right here than actually meets the eye. I've been using Squarespace since I started my business in 2012. It is a fantastic platform for people who aren't super tech savvy like me to build their business online. My 2 favorite features about my Squarespace website are the fact that it can pull material from my other social media accounts so that they appear on my site, like from my Instagram account, and also the fact that I can have a store where I can sell merchandise and other items directly from my website. If you're interested in starting your own website, be it a blog or a place to host a photo gallery or even start an online store, go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/AnnofAllTrades. That's Ann with an E for a 10% discount. Coming back over to this side, this wheel assembly came with bolts and other hardware that should have just made it really easy to put it on a regular pre-manufactured bike frame, but that's obviously not what we have. So we actually used Caleb's hydraulic press to press these bolts out of their assembly and then modify them on our own. even this wheel axle was made entirely from parts that we found just laying around in Caleb's garage. The axle itself used to be a tire wrench that we cut both sides off of, then we welded a nut to this side so we could tighten it, and threaded this side of it so that we could tighten the nut on this side once we were ready to assemble it all. The biggest challenge that we had with this whole wheel assembly project was figuring out how we were going to make the recycled brakes from the old scooter work on this assembly. So we scooted some things over, we tightened some nuts differently, and then Caleb welded on this extra tab with a nut on either side of an old bolt that he cut the top off of, drilled a hole through for the brake cable, and then put it all on here. And I would just like to point out right now that I taught Caleb something he didn't know during this whole project, because he said that we needed to order a specialized brake cable to this specific size. But because my parents rode bicycles across America and I spent a lot of time fixing bikes as a kid, I knew that you could actually just buy a brake cable assembly kit and make your own brake cable to link. So that's exactly what we did here. I spent $5 on a brake cable, we added it back to this assembly, we tightened it up here, and I think we finally have working brakes again. So I can pinch here and have the brakes work down there. I think she's ready for the inaugural ride. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and for supporting my channel in that way. If you'd like to support me in other ways, there are links for my Patreon and my merchandise below. I hope you leave this video feeling challenged, inspired, and excited to get outside and to do things with your own hands as well. Cheers!